It's Pentecost Sunday, and in my opinion, it's as important a religious holiday as Christmas or Easter. We sometimes call it the birthday of the church. I've been in churches where they do red cupcakes with red frosting and little candles on them and saying happy birthday to the church. So first, we hear the Spirit as wind. Here in Michigan, we know the power of wind, right? Tornadoes blowing through already this season. It's way too early. In creation, in the Christian creation story, the Hebrew creation story, the Ruach, I love to say that because you get to put a little spit in the back of your throat and say, the Ruach, the Spirit in Hebrew, a feminine word, by the way, blew over the chaos of the universe, and creation emerged as God spoke. In the Christian scriptures, the pneuma, also a feminine word for spirit in Greek, blows Jesus into the desert for 40 days of introspection, and in our story blows open the doors and windows of the room where the disciples are fearfully hunkering down. We know the wind as an integral force of creation, blowing away debris and the waste of the seasons, refreshing the planet in her cycles. More calmly and intimately, we know the Spirit as our very breath. She is life. I invite you to take a deep breath. Notice her presence within you. Then the fire appears. We also know fire to be both a healing force and a destructive force. Forests made vulnerable with one species planting are decimated by one match. And fire renews the earth, creating nutrients in the soil that replenish and allow plants to grow in their natural way. Campfires, who doesn't remember a good campfire with good singing around it, right? Birthday candles. Fires are often part of the rituals of life. The sun is a ball of fire and life for our planet. And in this case, fire is also connected with passion. The passion of the disciples comes forth. And then there's what happens with words. This story, for those of you who know the Hebrew story, the Tower of Babel, where the languages were confused and the people were dispersed, this is a reversal of that. People of many languages came together, and they were able to hear one another speaking in sync with what they understood to be true, due to the Spirit. She empowers understanding. Of course, we have this idea that Dan mentions in his book that we have Jesus and then we tack something on. One of the old ways we tack it on, right? We have Jesus and all this lovely new stuff, but we have to require circumcision. As Julie said, oops. You can look back at that list. It's frightening what we've done with Jesus and the way he's modeled new life. Finally, note the implications of all this activity, the wind, the fire, the words, the gathering. They heard the story in the midst of this of a new way, of Jesus' way, a way where doors and windows are blown open so that all feel welcome, where poverty and injustice are extinguished, where binaries are blown to pieces, where the sick are brought back into community and healed, where us and them becomes we, where revival of the ways of God's dream for the universe become a reality. But we don't like change. We would often rather stay in a situation that's ugly. Think back on your own life. me anyway, rather stay in a situation that I'm not really liking than change to something that I don't know. We don't know what it will require of us. We don't know how it will play out. We don't know what unfamiliarity we'll have to contend with. I wonder if we thwart the Spirit's work among us. Is it because we're afraid that we say, we've always done it that way? Enough of the Spirit stuff. We got to get on with our interim work. So don't worry. So I want to point again to our timeline on our wall. Lewis was so gracious to create this beautiful timeline. And there are little boxes on there where you can write when you joined the church, what you remember about your faith journey here, something that isn't up there that the church did. And it doesn't have to be in the same decade as when it happened. Just put the date with it. Lewis is going to recreate this with all of your comments on it so that you'll have it for posterity. And I invite you to go up there when two people are up there talking and listen, because people have great stories from their past here. Then last week we talked about identity and the moving parts that make up who we are as a community, the inward functioning, the character of beloved community that's among you, and the outward facing nature of how people see us and the ministries that reach out beyond our community here. Today we're talking about systems and structures. I know, you just want to fall asleep, don't you? Yeah. Sometimes in the interim world, this is often also referred to as changes in leadership. And we know that what happens when a pastor, especially a beloved pastor, leaves, that people reassess their involvement in a church. This is perfectly normal and natural. It's an opportune time to do that. And so people will leave a ministry that they've been doing for a while because their beloved pastor won't know. It's all good. I'll know, and your secret's safe with me. I'm just a short timer. Well, what happens is the systems and structures become suspect. Why was that person in that role for so long? Are there not term limits? Or do they love what they're doing? Right? Is there not a job description for that other role that says how things should go and what it is that you're supposed to do? And there's nothing wrong, right? This is just change and how it's supposed to go, right? We constantly need to be reassessing. Do the structures support our behavior, or is our behavior determining the structures? So the other consideration during this interim time is the church size, and most lay people don't know anything about this, but in the crazy interim world, there's a family-sized church, and some of you remember those days when you were 20 and you knew everything about everyone, right? Then there's a pastor-sized church, which I think is how Sal pretty much functioned, right? Sal was kind of the go-to person. He was the gatekeeper. He kept tabs of all the things that were happening. But you have a lot happening. And so my suggestion is that you're actually now functioning as a program-sized church. And this is a good thing. People who have an idea are empowered to begin a new ministry. You see a need, you fill it. You have an idea, you create something. That can't happen with just one person connecting all the things. And pretty soon, what happens, and this is really uncomfortable, 2 committees or teams meet at the same time, and you want to be on both of them. Yeah. Or there's a study going on, at the same time, there's a care group going on, and you want to be at both of them. Someone said to me the other day, I haven't yet, it was Jerry Coates, someone among you. He said, I haven't yet perfected the possibility of being in two places at one time. I thought, well, you need to get in one of those Harry Potter movies, because they got a thing. In a program-sized church, laity are empowered. People engage in many ministries. Lots of things can happen that can't happen when there's the bottleneck of one person. Nothing wrong, right? It's just you're growing, you're becoming. So this is a new way of being. The question becomes, how are we accountable to one another in that kind of messy functioning, right? Where spirit goes and blows. Oftentimes in that situation, the governing board has to grow. Coincidentally? Serendipitously? Your governing board is growing. I think spirit is at work. When there are two governing boards, one deals with kind of the financial, facilities, human resources, and the other deals with programming. And you may find that you want to go there someday, not today. Jesus had something to say about this. People like the old wine. They really like the old wine. They don't want to change. Just give me some more of that old wine. The problem is, when you run out of old wine and new wine is made, where does it get stored? If you put it in the old wineskins, they burst. It's a problem when you try to put new ideas, new values, new ways of functioning in old structures, in old systems. So normalizing change, constantly assessing what's working and what isn't, is important. After all, you are not your constitution, right? Or your bylaws, or even your policies and procedures. They're helpful documents, but they're not it. They're not the foundation. The Spirit is the foundation. So here we are, full circle on this Pentecost Sunday. I wonder if you know this story about the Leaning Tower of San Francisco. Yeah, it's really called Millennium Towers. It was completed in 2009, 58-story luxury high-rise in the heart of San Francisco's financial district. 400 high-end apartments from $7 million to $14 million. $700,000 to $14 million. Silicon executives, .com millionaires, pro athletes were among the eager buyers. Then the unthinkable. Within 3 years, interior walls began to crack. Windows shattered and fell to the sidewalks, debris falling on people's heads. We don't know of anyone that died from that. Millennium Towers was sinking. Today, the high-rise luxury building has sunk 16 inches. The top of the structure is leaning 29 inches off plumb. That I didn't buy. The cause was soon determined. In the early stages of the build, engineers had decided to forego the cost of digging 80 more feet down to solid bedrock, instead putting the piles on landfill above the bedrock. Recently, workers have tried to dig up sidewalks and streets and put steel pipes down there, and nothing's working. Apartment owners are talking about sharing the cost of $100 million. People can't sell their units. Lawsuits too many to count. It's a mess. That's what happens when you haven't set yourself up on a firm foundation. Structure is important. We are modern people, and I mean that in the technical sense. There's a modern era of history. We are now postmodern. So we're modern people in a postmodern world. Most of us. Values are changing. The way people see the world is changing. If we don't stay relevant with our functioning, our language, our structures as an important organization in our community, we'll die. Churches are dying left and right because they have not stayed relevant. Thank God, thank Spirit, you have. We have a message of good news that the world needs to hear. The message is that God's love is unconditional, that everyone is included, that all are equal and deserve to thrive, that peace and justice are compelling, that forgiveness is the way, that Jesus modeled something new and fresh. This is our foundation, the basis for our structures and systems. We can see this in our political system. I don't like to talk about politics, but I'm indicting both parties, and both is part of the problem, right? The structure of it benefits the people already in power. And so they want to keep it the way it is. If we change things up, different people could have power. And change is difficult, and it's difficult to capture what the Spirit is doing. It's like trying to put a lightning bug in a jar and use it for a flashlight or a spotlight. The bug dies. It's not effective. So we must always be asking, what is being shaken up so that love can shine through more vibrantly? I'll conclude with this reminder. There's nothing wrong here. You are an amazing people. Ask anyone sitting in the seats. You are an amazing people. And this is a time of opportunity. It's a time to look again at what ways are we not being as loving as we could be. Especially, as Lillian Daniel said, for those who are not yet here. And then I'll conclude with another quote by Lillian. That was in her conference e-news this week. She and her partner got married, and she described it, and she said, "Life at its best is a feast of love that flows freely in an order that we can neither control nor predict." Amen? Amen. Amen.